Good morning, fourth graders. This is Mrs. Bro. Today we're going to do a lesson on comparing decimals by using number lines and visual models. Let's get started with our problem of the day. Kiara and Shakina are drinking lots of water to stay hydrated. Shakina drinks 23 hundredths gallons of water, and Kiara drinks 4/10 gallons of water. Who drinks more water? Show how you know using a number line and a visual model. Read the problem again to yourself while I annotate. If you have the problem in front of you, hopefully you annotated just like me. And I'm going to have to switch out my pen so that it shows up a little darker. Let's go back and look at the problem. Shakina drinks 23 hundredths gallons of water, and Kiara drinks 4/10 gallons of water. Who drinks more water? That's our question. Show how you know using a number line and a visual model. Let's represent with our visual models. You can see here that this grid represents tenths. I know that because each space represents a tenth. There are 10 of them in a whole. This grid here represents hundredths. I know that because each square represents 1/100. There are 100 in this whole. Which grid would you use to represent 23 hundredths? That's right, this one. Shade in 23 hundredths. That should be 10. There's 20. 23 hundredths. Let's go ahead and write that underneath. On the tenths grid, we can represent Kiara, who drank 4/10. Look at the two models that are shaded and see if you can determine who drank more water, Kiara with 4/10 or Shakina with 23 hundredths. Great, I said Kiara too. One way we can compare decimals by using visual models is to represent each decimal, then look at which decimal takes up more area. You can see here that Kiara takes up 4 full bars in the 10th model. In the hundredths grid, Shakina takes 2 whole bars and part of a third one, not as much as Kiara. So when we write our inequality, Kiara with 4/10 is more than or greater than Shakina with 23 hundredths. So Kiara drank more water. Great job using visual models. Let's go back and review. What place is the 4 in? That's right, the tenths place. What place is the 2 in? That's right, it's also in the tenths place because 20 hundredths represents 2/10. As you can see, 2/10 equal 20 hundredths. Kiara drank more than Shakina because her visual model takes up more area. Let's look at what that would look like on a number line. First, we create a number line with endpoints of 0 and 1 because the two decimals in the problem are between 0 and 1. Then we partition the interval into 10 parts to represent tenths because there are 10 tenths in one whole. We remember that from fractions. Let's count our intervals to make sure. Remember, count the spaces, not the lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Did we get it right? That's awesome. When we are representing decimals on a number line, the first step is to think about what whole numbers the decimals are between, and then partition each interval into 10 parts to represent tenths, just like we did here. How would we represent each decimal on the number line? Right, we would find 4 tenths because that's how much water Kiara drank, and we would mark that on the number line. Let's put a K above to represent Kiara. But how would we find 23 hundredths on the number line if our intervals are in tenths? Think about that for a second. That's right. You remembered that 20 hundredths is actually 2 tenths. So if we count the intervals, 1 tenth, 2 tenths, 23 tenths would be just past here. Let's put an S for Shakina. Now you can see on the number line which number is furthest away from 0, which number is closest to 0. How would you compare these numbers now? Great job. Shakina's value is less because it's closest to 0. Kiara's value is more because it's further away from 0. So our inequality still works. 4 tenths is greater than 23 hundredths, and Kiara still drank more water. You can represent and compare decimals using visual models and a number line. Here's some things we need to think about. We need to think about what 2 blank is my number line between. What were the intervals in our number line? Did you say tenths? Fantastic. We need to think what 2 tenths is my number between. Then we need to think about how close is it to the next highest tenth, to the next highest tenth. We're going to go ahead and try one more, just so we can be sure and get it right. Look at the try one more. Danielle says that 17 hundredths is greater than 2 tenths because 17 is greater than 2. Do you agree? Use a model to prove your thinking. Go ahead and read the problem again while I annotate. If you don't have this printed out in front of you, that's okay. You can write down important information on your lined paper. You can see that the question is, do we agree? Do we agree with Danielle, who says that 17 hundredths is greater than 2 tenths, because 17 is greater than 2. I do agree that 17 is greater than 2, but we have to be careful not to get tricked when comparing decimals. Which grid would we use to represent hundredths? That's right, this one, because there are 100 in the whole. Let's go ahead and shade in 17 tenths. That's 10. And 17. That means we can use this one to represent tenths because there are 10 partitions in the whole. 1 and 2. 2 tenths, 17 hundredths. Let's go ahead and write those values above our models. Looking at your models, which one takes up more space? It's tricky. That's right. 2 tenths takes up a little bit more space than 17 hundredths. Remember, what value is in the tenths place? That's right, a 2. What value is in the tenths place here? You got it, a 1. So 2 tenths is more than 1 tenth. 2 tenths is more than 17 hundredths. We can write an inequality like this. Looking at your inequality, which goes with your model, ask yourself, do you agree with Danielle? That's right. No, I disagree with Danielle. And always in our math, we need to explain why. Two tenths takes up more space than 17 hundredths. And if we did this on a number line, you could see that 2 tenths would be right about here and 17 hundredths would be almost there. As you're doing your work today, you're going to want to think about which numbers are closest to 0 and which numbers are furthest away. Don't forget to write your inequalities. You can use visual models or number lines in your practice problems today. Your exit ticket will be a Google Doc that you can submit directly to the Google Classroom. Good luck on your math today.